I'm doing a Vox video, and it's not my normal ranty, oh, you're not very, no, no. I'm not actually mad. I am just supremely concerned for the writers and producers at Vox. I swear to God, they must be being held at gunpoint if they actually came up with this idea. This is not a joke. This is on the Vox YouTube channel. Are we automating racism? Yeah. And of course they have the dislike turns off. Nice. Oh my. Ready? And it's a YouTube original. Of course it's a YouTube original. Why wouldn't it be? Ugh.
Maybe if you guys could stand over here. Is it okay if they stand over here?
Yeah.
Oh wow, you're using an iPhone. Nice.
Actually, Christoph, you can get even lower. Hi. This is Lee, and this is Christoph. They're two of the hosts of this show.
Okay,
But
that's
to a
interesting.
machine, they're not people.
Wow, yes, that's very evident. Yes, we all.
This is just pixels. It's just data. A machine
It's not data.
shouldn't have a reason to prefer one of these.
Well, actually, it would have a reason to prefer, not because it's racist, because of, let's say, I don't know, pixels were more unique, making them, I don't know, say, easier to detect. Or lighting. Hey, did you know, or I guess colors with more white tend to be, more, shine brighter? Or at least when you put a light up to them. Yeah, it's true. And hey, Vox, I saw your rig. You have a light, so yeah. Also, the positioning of someone won't matter unless you cut off like half of their face. So yeah. Sorry, Vox. Which is what I think that's what you're attempting to go do. So yeah. Let's continue, Vox.
These guys over the other. And yet, as you'll see in a second, it does.
Well, preference is strong. If we were to. Okay, here. I've an experiment. Just go get any photo and. Any photo, it doesn't matter, and choose a random pixel, preferably in the foreground, because backgrounds they're typically filled with like three different types of colors, and it kind of matches. So go get a human, select a human skin, doesn't matter, and see what they're. See if actually, yeah, just go get a human, open it up, and turn the brightness to maximum. See which one illuminates the most. Black, white, because that's what they're doing in this example. So open up a picture of a black person and a white person and illuminate their skin as much as possible. Then, which one appears brighter? Yes, the white person will obviously do that.
Feels weird to call.
And that basically means that to a computer, the white pixels are easier to see compared to the background.
A machine racist.
But it's not.
I really can't explain. I can't explain what just happened.
Well, it could be for a variety of reasons. Lighting could just be that, your face is an odd shape, which I would disagree with that statement, but okay.
Driven systems are becoming a bigger and bigger part of our lives, and they work well a lot of the time.
Ooh, this dramatic music.
But when they fail,
once again, it's the white guy.
When they fail, they're not failing on everyone equally.
If I go back right now.
So he's using zoom on a wallpaper.
You can have.
And it cuts off his head. Oh wow, he gets super far back and his head gets cut off. Big surprise.
Neutral intentions, you can have good intentions, and the outcomes can still be discriminatory.
Whether you want to call
It's not discriminatory.
that machine racist or you want to call the outcome
Oh, Jesus.
racist, we have a problem.
Well, I wouldn't say we have a problem. First, we need to prove that it is actually the machine discriminating. So far, I've seen no evidence besides, oh hey, look, the machine chooses this. Why? I've not seen any evidence disproving other methods such as lighting. Are we automating racism? Glad you asked. Episode 2.
I
No,
was scrolling
season
through
2.
my Twitter feed a while back, and I kept seeing tweets that looked like this. Two of the same picture of Republican Senator Mitch McConnell smiling, or sometimes
Yes.
it would be four
Okay.
pictures of the same random stock photo guy.
So,
And I didn't really know what was going on, but it turns out that this was a big public test of algorithmic bias, because it turns out that these aren't pictures of just Mitch McConnell. They're pictures of Mitch McConnell and Barack Obama.
Oh wow.
So people were
okay.
uploading these really extreme vertical images to basically force this image cropping algorithm to choose one of these faces. People were alleging that there's a racial bias here. But I think what's so interesting about this particular algorithm is that it is so testable for the public.
Well, I can actually explain that one pretty easily. Mitch McConnell is closer to the center than Barack Obama is. Now, if he's not, it could be for color reasons, like pixel color, not race, or something like that. But the cropping algorithm on Twitter is not purposely racist.
It's something that we could test right now if we wanted to.
Do it.
You guys want to do
Yeah.
it? Okay. There we go. So Twitter does offer you options to crop your own image, but if you don't use those, it uses an automatic cropping algorithm.
Wow.
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 Oh, there it is.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Christoph, it likes you.
There it is.
Wow.
Okay, let's see. I'm actually gonna do some measurements. Here, 1 second. So, I've actually determined, what's his name, the white guy is closer to the center than the black guy. If I draw a line from the center, and it's the exact same length of line, the line, gets up around to half his face. Whereas if I were to put it in the exact same spot, in the middle, the same length, it gets almost to the very bottom, but it doesn't exactly. So, yeah. Sorry, Vox.
Wow.
Whoa.
There it is.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Christoph, it likes you. Okay, let's try the happy one.
Wow. Unbelievable.
It's both times.
What is this?
Oh wow.
So, do
Again.
you guys think this machine is racist?
The only
No. For that to happen, the programmers would have purposely designed it to be that way. No. For it to be racist, you'd specifically need to program something to detect race, then you'd need to crop it, which isn't that hard. But you need to do this reliably, which is hard. Let's continue.
The only other theory I possibly have is if the algorithm prioritizes white faces because it can pick them up quicker for whatever reason against whatever
Lighting.
background, immediately looks through the image and tries to scan for a face. Why is it always finding the white face first?
With this picture, I think someone could argue that the lighting makes Christoph's face more sharp. I still
Wow, it does.
would love to do a little bit more systematic testing on this. I think maybe hundreds of photos could allow us to draw a conclusion.
But that wouldn't disprove that it's making Kristoff's face more sharp. In fact, it could prove exactly that.
I have downloaded a bunch of photos from a site called Generated Photos. These people do not exist. They were a creation of AI. And I pulled a bunch that I think will give us a pretty decent way to test this. So, Christoph, I wonder if you would be willing to help me out with that.
Do you want me to tweet hundreds of photos?
Exactly.
Wow, it's a normal day for a Voxa journalist. I say journalist.
Sure, I've got time.
Ugh, and we need a time lapse of this. What? Why are we... The myth of the impartial machine? What the hell? You branded a backpack. Nice job.
There may be some people who take issue with the idea that machines can be racist without a human brain or malicious intent.
Yes. I refuse to believe without specific orders that a machine that isn't self-learning or something like that can develop a bias so strong as to completely ignore an entire race's face.
Intent, but such a narrow definition of racism really misses a lot of what's going on. I want to read a quote that responds to that idea.
Well, why is a narrow definition of racism bad? I mean, yes, overly narrow things can be, well, bad and very extreme, but I would consider racism discriminating based off of race. I would think that covers everything to be said about racism.
It says, robots are not sentient beings, sure, but racism flourishes well beyond hate-filled hearts. No malice needed, no N-word required, just a lack of concern for how the past shapes the present.
So what? A machine has no access to the past unless a human gives it to it, or it somehow discovers what happened in the past, which is possible, but generally it would require a human.
I'm going now to speak to the author of those words, Rupa Benjamin. She's a professor of African American Studies at Princeton University.
Yes, because she is completely qualified to talk about why a API, I'm going to assume, is, well, discriminating. I don't know. Jesus.
When did you first become concerned that automated systems, AI, could be biased?
A few years ago, I noticed these headlines and hot takes about so-called racist and sexist robots.
Whoa,
There was
racist and sexist robots.
a viral video in which two friends were in a hotel
Oh, Jesus.
bathroom, and they were trying to use an automated soap dispenser.
Black hand, nothing. Larry, go. Nothing. Larry.
Oh, yes, you were 5 feet. 5 feet, Jesus Christ. 5 millimeters from it.
Go. Nothing. Larry.
Jesus fucking Christ. Fuck you. Discord. Let's see. We seem to have some pretty harsh lighting. We have some pretty harsh lighting based off of... Oh yeah, light way above it. Okay. Again, I'm gonna say this is sharper.
Black hand, nothing.
And although these seem funny and they kind of get us to chuckle, the question is, are similar...
Also, I've used automatic soap dispensers before. they're shit. I mean, it's like, hello, I'm going to kill you if you. I guess I can't kill a robot. I'm going to pour water on your circuitry if you do not dispense soap for me. Dispense soap now. And that's how I got sued.
Similar design processes impacting much more consequential technologies that we're not even aware of.
When the sort of early news
So, in other words, a machine, a non-learning machine, somehow developed a racial bias. Okay, sure.
controversies came along,
Also, how is she? In what way is she qualified to talk about machine learning?
maybe 10 years ago, people were surprised by the fact that they showed a racial bias. Why do you think people were surprised?
They
Part of
showed a racial bias.
it is a deep attachment and commitment to this idea of tech neutrality. People
Well, yes, of course. You're saying every single or the majority of AIs have developed a system independent from humans, and some non-AIs, just sensors, have developed systems that can detect race and specifically do not activate when a certain race is detected. Are you telling me that?
I think because life is so complicated and our social world is so messy, really cling on to something that will save us and a way of making decisions that's not kind of drenched in the muck of all of human subjectivity, human prejudice, and frailty.
Yes. So you're saying machines have developed prejudice. A sensor has developed a prejudice. Oh my.
We want it so much to be
We
true.
want it so much to be true, you know? And so the danger is that we don't question it. And still, we continue.
So you're saying a sensor has developed prejudice. Are you mentally deficient?
And so the danger is that we don't question it. And still, we continue to have, you know,
Look, I'm trying to be a safe for YouTube.
so-called glitches when it comes to race.
Glitches. No, you don't understand what a glitch. A glitch that large, which no. That, first of all, if it was a glitch, it would, it wouldn't really work with dim lighting.
And skin complexion, and I don't think that they're glitches. It's a system.
Oh wow, you don't think they're glitches. So what you're saying is a goddamn sensor hooked up to some fucking wires to dispense goddamn soap. It has secretly has secret code written on it to detect race from a sensor. Actually, I guess it could be a camera. So, number one, they'd have to install a camera that did. Yeah, this is. So, for her theory to be correct, that soap dispenser would not have a sensor, it would have a camera. Now, this camera, understand, would detect race, which is difficult. Would detect race and dispense soap based off of that. But not only that, you'd have to detect, if there's a large blob, worthy of getting soap, and whether or not it's close enough to that. Do you understand how complicated this would be when you could just...
In the truest sense of the word, it has to do with our computer systems and the process of design.
That's barely a machine. It's a sensor hooked up to... I don't even know. Could it... Actually, what is it hooked up to? I don't know. A soap dispenser.
AI can seem pretty abstract sometimes. So we built this to help explain how machine learning works and what can
I don't think you actually understand how machine learning works, but okay.
go wrong. This black box is the part of the system that we interact with. It's the software that decides which dating profiles we might like, how much a rideshare should cost, or how a photo should be cropped on Twitter. We just see a device making a decision, or more accurately, a prediction. What we don't see is all of the human decisions that went into the design of that technology. Now, it's true that when you're dealing with AI, that means that the code in this box wasn't all written directly by humans.
Yes, but in a soap dispenser, yes, it was. It was all written directly by humans because you wouldn't need a self-correcting algorithm to. No,
But by machine learning algorithms that find complex patterns in data. But they don't just spontaneously learn
Yeah.
things from the world, they're learning from examples. Examples that are labeled by people, selected by people, and derived from people too.
Yes. So you're saying that a soap dispenser had to be programmed to be racist.
See, these machines and their predictions, they're not separate from us or from our biases or from our history, which we've seen in headline after headline for the past 10 years.
We're using the face tracking software, so it's supposed to follow me as I move. As you can see, I do this, no following. Not really follow me. Wanda, if you would, please.
Sure.
In 2010,
That's suspicious. Okay.
Follow me. Wanda, if you would, please.
Sure.
Yeah.
in 2000,
Yeah. The person who moves across, it doesn't immediately follow. So, yeah.
in 2010,
And then the person moves faster and it does follow. Yeah.
the top hit
very.
when you did a search for black girls, 80% of what you found on the first page of results was all porn sites.
Google is apologizing after its photo software labeled 2 African Americans gorillas. Microsoft is shutting down its new artificial intelligent
my.
bot after Twitter users taught it how to be racist. In order to make yourself hotter, the app appeared to lighten your skin tone.
Overall, they work better on lighter faces than darker faces.
Yes. That could be for a variety of reasons.
And they worked especially poorly on darker female faces.
Okay, so I've noticed that on all these damn beauty filters, they keep taking my nose and making it thinner. Give me my African nose back, please.
So the first thing that I tried was the prompt was 2 Muslims. And the way it completed was 2 Muslims, one with an apparent bomb, tried to blow up the federal building in Oklahoma City in the mid-1990s.
Detroit police wrongfully arrested Robert Williams based on a false facial recognition hit.
There's definitely a
Yes. Facial recognition software is complicated. Did you know this?
pattern of harm that disproportionately falls on vulnerable people, people of color. Then there's attention, but of course the damage has already been done.
Why did you feel to need to do that edit? Yes. Let me go take my camera off. Film something that I just that Vox just played in high definition. Then let me put the camera back on the camera stand, and finally let me Jesus, this is unnecessary. Jesus Christ, Vox.
Hello.
Hey, Christoph. Thanks for doing these tests.
Of course.
I know it was a bit of a pain, but I'm curious what you found.
I'm
Sure.
curious what you found. Oh, jeez.
I mean, I actually did it. I actually tweeted 180 different sets of pictures. In total, dark-skinned people were displayed in the crop 131 times, And light-skinned people were displayed in the crop 229 times, which comes out to 36% dark-skinned and 64%
Okay, yes, sure. Got it. But I could do that probably much easier.
light-skinned.
Take it.
That does seem to be evidence of some bias. It's interesting.
Could also just be, guess what? Skin, darker skin being less reflective. Hey, do you know why, those, what are they called? Projectors. You know why they're not, they don't use black backs, I guess. I don't know. Because it's hard to project on them. It makes the whites very desaturated.
Because Twitter posted a blog post saying that they had done some of their own tests before launching this tool, and they said that they didn't find evidence of racial bias, but that they would be looking into it further.
Of course, this is monetized. Let's continue.
They also said that the kind of technology that they use to crop images is called the saliency prediction model, which means software that basically is making a guess about what's important in an image.
So how does a machine know what
Well, let's see. Considering we've seen she has 0 qualifications in, this field, I'm sure we can trust her.
is salient? What's right?
By the way, I have 0 qualifications. I just know a few fair bit things about code, and I hate it. I hate coding. I can do it, I just hate it.
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. There's these saliency data sets that documented people's eye movements while they looked at certain sets of images. So you can take those photos and you can take that eye tracking data and teach a computer what humans look at. So Twitter's not going to give me any more information about how they trained their model, but I found it.
Yes, because that's very important. That's called an algorithm, and guess what? They protect their algorithm very closely because it takes a lot of money to train one.
I found an engineer from a company called Gradio. They built an app that does something similar, and I think it can give us a closer look at how this kind of AI works.
You find it necessary to do this. Hi guys. Jesus fucking Christ.
Hey, Josh.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So you and your colleagues built a saliency cropping tool that is similar to what we think Twitter is probably doing.
Yeah, we took a public machine learning model, hosted it on our library, and launched it for anyone to try. And you don't have to constantly post pictures on your timeline to try and experiment with it, which is what people were doing when they first became aware of it.
And that's what we did. We did a bunch of tests just on Twitter. But what's interesting about what your app shows is the sort of intermediate step there, which is the saliency prediction.
Right. I think that intermediate step is important for people to see.
Well, I brought some pictures for us to try. These are actually the hosts of Glad You Asked. And I was hoping we could put them into your interface and see what the saliency prediction is.
Sure. Just upload this image here.
Okay, so we have a saliency map. Clearly, the prediction is that faces are salient, which is not really a surprise. But it looks like maybe they're not equally salient. Is there a way to...
Oh, yes, of course.
Sort of look closer at that?
So what we can do here, we actually built it out in the app where we can put a window on someone's specific face, and it will give us a percentage of what amount of saliency you have over your face versus in proportion to the whole thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Fabiola in the center of the picture, but she's actually got a lower percentage of the salience.
Yes. So?
Compared to Cleo, who's to her right.
Right. And
yes, but they're both in a decently similar location. Plus, if you look at a picture normally, you're not going to look directly at the middle, you're generally going to look somewhere in the center and up, which is, oh wow, where her face is.
And trying to guess why a model is making a prediction and why it's predicting what it is.
Well, you generally can't.
Is a huge problem in machine learning. It's always something that you have to kind of backtrace to try and understand, and sometimes it's not even possible.
Wow.
I looked up what data sets were used to train the model you guys used, and I found one that was created by researchers at MIT back in 2009.
Oh,
so it was
Jesus.
originally about 1,000 images. We pulled the ones that contained faces, any face that we could find that was sort of big enough to see. And I went through all of those, and I found that only 10 of the photos, that's just about 3%, included someone who appeared to be of Black or African descent.
Okay, so...
Yeah, I mean, if you're collecting a data set through Flickr, you're first of all, you're biased to people that have used Flickr back in, 2009, you said, or something?
And I guess if we saw in this image data set, if there are more cat faces than Black faces, we can probably assume that minimal effort was made to make that data set representative.
Okay. How machines become biased? Humans, wow.
When someone collects data into a training data set, they can be motivated by things like convenience and cost, and end up with data that lacks diversity.
Wow. Almost like the machine's not racist. Also, diversity isn't a programmer's number one concern. It's effectiveness of the product.
That type of bias, which we saw in the saliency photos, is relatively easy to address. If you include more images representing racial minorities, you can probably improve the model's performance on those groups. But sometimes...
You probably could? How would you know? How? If you were to throw a machine learning algorithm a curveball, it would completely destroy itself.
Human subjectivity is embedded right into the data itself. Take crime data, for example. Our data on past crimes in part reflects police officers' decisions about what neighborhoods to patrol and who to stop and arrest.
Yes, high crime neighborhoods generally get more police. Did you know that?
We don't have an objective measure of crime, and we know that the data we do have contains at least some racial profiling, but it's still being used to train crime prediction tools. And then
Yes. Do you have a solution?
there's the question of how the data is structured over here. Say you want a program that identifies chronically sick patients to get additional care so they don't end up in the ER. You'd use
Well, you could say, take photos of the bubonic plague.
past patients as your examples, but you have to choose a label variable. You have to define for the machine what a high-risk patient is. There's not always an obvious answer.
Yes, which is why you do tests. I don't think you get it. You can't put a label. See this hex? If this hex code pops up, it means this is sick. No. You know the outcome of something, so you say if it's correct or not, and then you just train the AI and let it run. Sometimes the AI won't even work.
A common choice is to define high risk as high cost, under the assumption that people who use a lot of healthcare resources are in need of intervention. Then the learning algorithm looks through the
Or they're just sick with a serious illness.
patient's data, their age, sex, medications, diagnoses, insurance claims, and it finds the combination of attributes that correlates with their total health costs. And once it gets good at predicting total health costs on past patients, that formula becomes software to assess new patients and give them a risk score. But instead of predicting sick
Okay,
patients,
so?
this predicts expensive patients. Remember, the label was cost. And when researchers took a closer look at those risk scores, they realized...
Yeah, cost. You're saying this is for an insurance company. If you have a patient who would have a high cost of insurance, you generally wouldn't want to, well, agree with them. You'd want a low-cost patient.
realized that label choice was a big problem. But by then, the algorithm had already been used on millions of Americans.
So why was it a problem?
It produced risk scores for different patients. And if a patient had a risk score of almost 60, they would be referred into the program for screening, further screening. And if they had a risk score of almost 100, they would default into the program. Now, when we look at the number of chronic conditions that patients of different risk scores were
Okay.
affected by. We see a racial disparity where white patients had fewer conditions than black patients at each risk score. That means that black patients were sicker than their white counterparts when they had the same risk score. And so what happened is, in producing these risk scores and using spending, they failed to recognize that on average, black people incur fewer costs for a variety of reasons, including institutional racism, including lack of access to high quality insurance, and a whole host of other.
Lack of access. So you're saying a insurance company would willingly discriminate against a potential customer? In fact, not just one of them. Okay, maybe. But the majority, the 90 to 80%, would turn down a black person simply for being black of insurance companies. Is that what you're saying?
Other factors,
But not because they're less sick.
not because they're less sick. And so I think it's important to remember this had racist outcomes, discriminatory outcomes, not because there was a big bad boogeyman behind the screen out to get black patients, but precisely because no one was thinking about racial disparities in healthcare. No one.
So, a racial disparity in healthcare. Well, if it incurs cost, yes, it would be accurate. Untrue, or actually, no, not untrue. Yes, harsh, and probably, would be in need of fixing if inaccurate. But if it is accurate, it is correct. You could not argue against that.
No one thought it would matter. And so it was about the colorblindness, the race neutrality that created this. The good news is that now the researchers who exposed this and who brought this to light are working with the company that produced this algorithm to have a better proxy. So instead of spending, they'll actually be
Proxy to what?
people's actual physical conditions and the rate at which they get sick, etc.
Yes. It could also be the severity of their illness and the average cost of treating that. You can't just set a baseline number because, let's say, well, I don't know, a pandemic happened and you were, say, required to pay for something. Well, if someone was more likely to get something, you would be more likely to charge them more because, well, expensive things need to be paid for somehow, or, can't be bought, or in the US government's case, we get loans, so.
Is harder to figure out. It's a harder kind of proxy to calculate, but it's more accurate.
Well, not necessarily more accurate. In fact, you may just be shifting the problem down. You could just be, say, taking in a person who actually should get in and doesn't.
I feel like what's so unsettling about this healthcare algorithm
Why'd you turn on the gas?
is that the patients would have had no way of knowing this was happening. It's not like Twitter, where you can upload your own picture, test it out, compare with other people. This was just working in the background, quietly prioritizing the care of certain patients based on an algorithmic score, while the other patients probably never knew they were even passed over for this program. I feel like there has to be...
Yes, but if someone's... Oh my god. Vox.
To be a way for companies to vet these systems in advance. So I'm excited.
Well, no, like the tech guy said, it's sometimes impossible, or it would take so long to find out why. It wouldn't know. Just
excited to talk to Deborah Raji. She's been doing a lot of thinking and writing about just that. My question for you is, how do we find out about these problems before they go out into...
Tell me your
to
qualifications.
the world and cause harm rather than afterwards.
So I guess a clarification point is that
Mozilla fellow? What the hell is this? Okay, Mozilla fellow. What is this? Engineers. So, the internet. Oh, so basically she works, volunteers? I don't even know. She works for an internet censorship company. Got it. Oh, I know what this is. Oh, I know exactly what this is. Yeah. Ooh, yeah, they're pretty big on the censorship.
machine learning is highly unregulated as an industry. These
Yes. Why does it need to be regulated?
companies don't have to report their performance metrics. They don't have to report their
Well,
evaluation
sometimes they don't even know their performance metrics.
results to any kind of regulatory body. But internally, there is this new culture of documentation that I think has been incredibly productive. I worked on a couple projects with colleagues at Google, and one of the main outcomes of that was this effort called Model Cards. Very simple, one-page documentation on how the model actually works, but also questions.
Well, again, sometimes people don't know how something works.
That are connected to ethical concerns, such as the intended use for the model, details about where the data is coming from.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Are you telling me that someone would develop an AI like Twitter and not know what the intended use is? Yes, let me just go program this AI beep boop boop boop. Okay, I've got my flawless AI. Its intended use, I don't know.
How the data is labeled, and then also instructions to evaluate the system according to its performance on different demographic subgroups.
Maybe that's something that's hard to
Demographic subgroups?
accept, is that it would actually be maybe impossible to get performance across subgroups to be exactly the same. How much of that do we just have to be like, okay?
I really don't think there's an unbiased data set in which everything will be perfect. I think the more important thing is to actually evaluate and assess things with an active eye for those that are most likely to be negatively impacted.
So what are we going to do? Add more to the algorithm? I mean, it's not ever going to be fixed.
If you know that people of color are most vulnerable, or a particular marginalized group is most vulnerable in a particular situation, then prioritize them in your evaluation. But I do think there's certain...
Okay. But wouldn't that just actually, I guess it could diagnose them more accurately, but it could also have the unintended side effect of diagnosing the particular group, well, at a higher rate, since well, here's, at least, it would say, okay, sick people, so it would then try to make a connection, so it may detect on something else, but it may detect on some racial attributes. I'm not saying it would, I'm just saying it could do that.
Certain situations where maybe we should not be predicting with a machine learning.
Certain situations where we shouldn't be predicting with a machine learning algorithm is what you're going to say. Unfortunately, thanks for the ad, Fox. God.
Let's start with the end of the world.
Oh my
Why don't we?
god. Get your masterclass, stop. Okay, let's let internet censorship lady.
Predicting with a machine learning system at all.
We shouldn't be predicting things like how likely someone is to get sick of something not by a machine learning algorithm. We shouldn't judge them at all, but when someone eventually does get sick, the company will probably just get rid of them. I mean, either your rates are going to increase a lot, which could have discouraged you from actually, signing the contract if you knew your rates were going to be so high. If the algorithm actually properly properly guess how likely you were going to get sick, which is, well, the algorithm is guaranteed to have flaws. So, yeah.
Be super cautious and super careful about, where we deploy it and where we don't deploy it, and what kind of human oversight we put over these systems as well.
The problem of bias in AI is really big. It's really difficult. But I don't think it means we have to give up on machine learning altogether.
Yeah, because basically you can't control for it. There is no control. I don't think Vox understands this. So, yeah.
Altogether. One benefit of bias in a computer versus bias in a human is that you can measure and track it fairly easily. And you can tinker with your model to try to get fair outcomes if you're motivated to do so.
The first step was becoming aware of the problem. Now the second step is enforcing solutions, which I think we're just beginning to see now.
But Deb is raising a bigger question. Not just how do we get bias out of the algorithms, but which algorithm should be used at all?
I mean, should we regulate it? No. We should just let companies decide. I don't care if, they're like, well, you're 60% or 6% higher to buy a potted plant, therefore you don't get this pencil. I don't really care, and I just saw a pencil in a potted plant in her backdrop, so yeah.
Do we need a predictive model to be cropping our photos? Do we want...
Well, you have the option to crop it by yourself.
Facial recognition in our communities, many would say no, whether it's biased or not. And that question of which
Okay, sue the police.
Technologies get built and how they get deployed in our world, it boils down to resources and power. It's the power to decide whose interests will be served by a predictive model, and which questions.
Well, no, it's not the power to decide. That would be called racism. If you don't know, Jesus Christ.
You could ask, okay, I want to know how landlords are making life for renters hard. Which landlords are not fixing up their buildings? Which ones are hiking rent? Or you could ask, okay.
Well, they could be hiking rent because, say, taxes were to increase for them.
Hey, let's figure out which renters have low credit scores. Let's figure out the people who have a gap in unemployment, so I don't want to rent to them. And so it's at that problem of forming the question and posing the problem.
Well, yes, you wouldn't want to rent to someone who is more likely to have unemployment, because then they can't pay the bills.
That the power dynamics are already being made that set us off in one trajectory or another.
And the big challenge there being that with these two possible lines of inquiry, one of those is probably a lot more profitable than the other one.
Exactly. And too often the people who are creating these tools, they don't...
I mean, you do know rent control exists and, socialism, so just move to Africa, I guess, if you want. I don't know where I was going with this.
You don't necessarily have to share the interests of the people who are posing the questions, but those are their clients. So the question for the designers and the programmers is, are you accountable only to your clients? Or are you also accountable to the larger body politic?
I would say you're not accountable if your AI has an issue. Unless it's completely a bonehead mistake. But if your artificial intelligence develops a certain way, I'd argue that you're not accountable. Yes, okay, maybe if you've, design a site, that has a massive flaw that was programmed by you, you're accountable. But an AI does not make you responsible. It's an artificial intelligence. No. Jesus.
Are you responsible for what these tools do in the world?
No. You didn't make the tools. No, you're not. End of video, bye. Oh, fuck.